Let's see. Dr. John Jaquish is a fraud. All right. Okay. So I've been sent this particular individual in the past few months. And initially I ignored it, but after watching him, I think we're going to need to address him because now he's getting popular to the point where he's on, what's this guy's name? Rich Cooper. Got a relatively decent audience, and I'm seeing this guy's face too many places now. So now we're going to have to dismantle his bullshit. Even though, Rich Cooper, he's, I'm not buying any of his shit either. He's kind of pushing a bunch of nonsense to begin with, but even he seemed to not be buying this guy's bullshit. So time to get him. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. John Jaquish, but he came up with a resistance band system called the X3 bar. Essentially what he did is he took already existing resistance bands and he hooked a bar to them. And he said you can build muscle 3 times as fast by using his resistance bands attached to the bar and whatever program he has. And the reason or the science behind his claims is not only wrong, but it's kind of ridiculous. So I'm going to go through this short interview with Rich Cooper here and debunk all the stupid, crazy shit that he says. First of all, a little background on Dr. John Jaquish. He has a medical degree from a diploma mill from the Cayman Islands. Basically, what you do is you basically just give them a bunch of money, and then they create a diploma for you. So he's not a real medical doctor. Right there, you can tell he's a fraud. He has a fake diploma that he just paid for. He didn't go to any sort of accredited school for his MD. So right off the bat, your bullshit meter should be broken. So again, he's an exercise guy. He comes up with bullshit, and his latest thing is the X3 bar, which essentially is just resistance bands with his stupid bar attached to it. So we're going to go through some of his claims, and I'm going to debunk them for you.
All the lowest risk joint injury.
First of all, I'm going to play a little bit of this for you. Let me know if you can hear it. Please leave a comment if you can hear it, because if not, I'm turning the volume up.
Dr. Jaquish methods are used in training and the world's most elite athletes in association with.
Let me turn the captions on.
The entire Miami Heat organization, various NFL and NBA players, as well as Olympians. Dr. Jaquish's book explaining his non-conventional approach to human physiology is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And yeah, you were kind enough to send me a copy. I've got it here on my desk. It's well researched. The interesting thing I found about it, I was just looking at the book on Amazon. There's a lot of criticisms of it from people saying, "Well, it's not well researched."
Watch how defensive he gets here, because everybody's been talking shit about him because he's a fucking idiot. Watch how defensive he gets. He's such a baby.
Dude, like, did you actually open the book? Like, it's really nothing but a research paper is the way that
His face.
What
What a beta.
Introducing
Well-
48 square centimeters of 2% cashback earning potential.
Excuse the
This is
commercial.
what I look for
It's YouTube.
real life. The new Wells Fargo Active Cash Visa credit card. That's real life ready.
Credit cards are for fools, by the way. Here we go.
And the criticism has nothing to do with the content.
Yeah.
Usually it's with me personally. People are very upset that I'm successful.
No, they're upset that you're a fraud and you're scamming people.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just grab the bands over here because you sent me a little bit of a kit. So these bands are all that you need to develop strong muscle fiber. And in case you didn't see him on the cover of the book, like he's jacked AF. How old are you now, John?
44.
44. We'll talk about your approach to self-care and all that stuff in this cast too. So we got about an hour, so you guys are really gonna like this. But this stack of bands here, as a guy that's lifted weights his entire life, and I've done some unconventional stuff for athletics. Like there was a gentleman by the name of Charles Atlas. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Charles Atlas was a guy that coined this term dynamic tensions, and it was basically like an ebook that my dad handed me when I was like 11 or 12, because I was a skinny kid. He's like, here, read this. And I started doing push-ups and all these, dynamic tension movements that are tied into it. And I found this theory, like what you use with these bands. And I mean, the cool thing I like about this is you can travel, with this stuff. You can put this in your suitcase.
Yeah, we're around the world.
Yeah. And there's lots of places that, like you can go around and lock down, type of scenarios. And this is the bar that goes with it. There's a foot stand as well. You guys can check that all out. I just think it's a cool accessory. Like, I wouldn't use it to replace my squat rack and the weights that I have in there, but I think it's a nice complement to all that.
As you can see, Rich Cooper's probably getting a little bit of kickback from sales after this interview because he got a following. As you can see, he's not even convinced that this thing is at all useful. He's not replacing his usual strength training routine. So as you can tell, already off the bat, he's like, well, you may make some outrageous, ridiculous claims, which we're going to get to in a second, but I'm still not replacing my resistance training over it, even though you're probably giving me kickbacks for the shit.
Is this what you do exclusively for self-care, for developing a strong physique?
Yeah, haven't touched a weight in 4 years, and I put on over 60 pounds of muscle and lost about 20 pounds.
Okay.
All right. So this guy says he hasn't lifted weights in 4 years, which is an outright lie. He also says he gained 60 pounds of muscle. I believe I heard that correctly. And lost 20 pounds of body fat. Let's see the captions here.
I wouldn't use it to replace my squat rack and the weights that I have in there, but I think it's a nice complement to all that. Is this what you do exclusively for self-care, for developing a strong physique?
Let's
Yeah,
see.
haven't touched a weight in 4 years, and I put on over 60 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
And lost.
So he says he put on 60 pounds of muscle and lost 20 pounds of body fat. First of all, that is over the course of a lifetime of training. If your diet was perfect, if your training frequency and volume was perfect, if you had good genetics and you were steroid enhanced, 60 pounds of muscle over the course of a lifetime is fucking insane. He did it in 4 years with some rubber bands, is what he claims. And he lost 20 pounds of muscle. So think of it this way. He looks like kind of a big guy. I don't know. He's probably like 5'5". He's probably short. But, he doesn't look like he was ever under 200 pounds within the last 25 years. So what is he, like 260? Like if he's 260, so he's got to be within 220 to 260 at 45 years old. He's obviously pharmaceutically enhanced, obviously. And even if he was pharmaceutically enhanced and using his exercise bands, there's no fucking way he would be able to gain 60 pounds of muscle in 4 years. That's that's 15 pounds of muscle a year. That's like, 1 to 2 pounds of muscle a month is insane, especially. So he's I don't want to call him an advanced trainee, but an experienced trainee. So he had been training his whole life, then switched to these resistance bands and put on 60 pounds. Come on. This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Again, 60 pounds of muscle for a steroid-enhanced trainee with great genetics is insane. And he did it. Well, it doesn't claim to be natural. He's clearly not. But he did it at 40 years old with rubber bands. Nah, no way.
About 20 pounds.
Okay. I think I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment, if I'm being honest. I don't know, like, what do you think would be reasonable? 30 to 60 days of just using bands? Just to kind of
30 to 60 days is not enough time to see a noticeable difference doing anything. Keep that in mind. You got to do it for several months.
compare it to
Yeah, I mean, and follow the program. Like you got to use the bar and the plate.
Got to use the bar.
The bands by themselves. It's like you go to take one of those bands and you throw it around your back and you go to do like a push-up. Your wrists are twisting outward. If you get heavy enough to be relevant for strength, and you could break a wrist.
Wow. This guy just said so much bullshit. All right, so he said you have to use the program and you have to use the bar. Bands alone are no good. But the bands with my bar, on the other hand, completely different story. So obviously, bands are bullshit. Only if you use his bands. So that right there, bullshit meter should be going off because he's discrediting bands right off the bat. Only his bands are good. So you got to use his bar. And he makes the claim that if you use a band heavy enough, the moron doesn't understand the difference between load and resistance. A band is not heavy. They all weigh relatively the same weight. A thicker band can provide more resistance than another one, but it isn't heavy. It isn't weight. So basically what he's saying is if you use a band that produces, and he said heavy enough to be relevant, but if he was familiar with how the body actually works, he would know that it really doesn't matter the resistance you use as long as you produce a deep enough level of fatigue. He's under the assumption, too, you have to go heavy to build muscle and strength, which is stupid. We know that that's not even true. So he says if you use a band heavy enough, all of his terms are so fucking wrong. A band heavy enough, then it turns your wrist in and you could break a wrist. What? How are you going to break a wrist with a rubber band? So this guy right there, he tries to scare you into not using bands without his system because you might break a wrist. Jesus.
So the bar and the plate were really necessary. My original plan, when I came to this discovery, which really had to do with my bone density research in my first convention.
Don Coulier-Swat, totally agree. Red pill is bullshit for beta males who want to blame women for their mistakes.
So
just a little
in
side
the
note.
clinical trial of that, it was like I looked at the data and it was like, wow, this kind of proves that weightlifting is really lousy stimulus. Like, we are capable of lifting a lot more than we do, but we lift very lightweight because we're limited by our weaker range of motion. And in our stronger range of motion, coincidentally, we're 7 times stronger.
A little tell. See, and that's so funny. He goes and scratches his nose. He does a self-soothe because he's fucking lying. I like to watch his body language, too, to see how bad he's lying. So he did 7 times as strong. Fucking lie. And the reason he knows he's lying is because that varies between individuals. Some people might be 7 times as strong in an extended position. Some people might be 5. Some people might be 10. It all depends on neuromuscular efficiency, leverage, musculoskeletal geometry, limb length, all those things. So he also says resistance training is a lousy stimulus. Guys, the stimulus isn't resistance training. The stimulus is deep, aggressive muscle fatigue. You can use a machine. You can use a barbell. You can use a heavy lead pipe. You can use a sack of fucking potatoes. It doesn't matter as long as you address the targeted muscle group in accordance with muscle and joint function and fatigue it deeply enough to. Is it what you're talking about? No, it's not a legit degree. But it's deeply enough to set in motion the adaptive response. Doesn't matter what you use. So he says resistance training is a lousy stimulus. Resistance training isn't the stimulus. Aggressive muscle fatigue is a stimulus. He's just saying this to promote his bullshit. And he says also that a lot of people don't lift or use as heavy of weight as they could because they're limited by the weaker parts of the range of motion. No shit. So that's under the false assumption that lifting a heavier weight gives you better results. And all of the exercise science research as of the last 10, 15, 20 years shows that this is wrong. It shows that load is irrelevant as long as you're generating a deep enough level of muscle fatigue. So everything he just said is flat out wrong. But unfortunately, some gullible idiots would believe him.
And what part is the 7 times stronger range of motion? Is that towards the top, towards the end of the motion, or where?
Shoulder lockout. So like if I'm demonstrating for those watching, like 120-degree angle from upper to lower arm.
Mm-hmm.
So like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like the back of my hand would be in line with my clavicle.
Mm-hmm.
I can either absorb or produce the greatest amount of force.
Okay. And
the reason you can absorb or produce the greatest amount of force is due to the reduction in moment arm. The moment arm is the distance between, for instance, if I'm holding, say this remote is a weight. If I'm holding a weight here versus a weight out here, we can both agree that holding the weight out here feels much heavier because the distance between the axis of rotation and the resistance is longer. The longer the moment arm, the more resistance is being placed on the axis of rotation. This is basic biomechanics. Basic. So obviously, when you're back here, you have a longer moment arm between the axis of rotation and the resistance, which is going to be going through your forearm. Axis of rotation is going to be shoulder. Almost full extension, you have a much shorter moment arm. The shorter the moment arm, the less resistance is placed on the axis of rotation. Simple biomechanics. So he says, because you can produce more force out here, no, you cannot produce more force at 120 degrees of elbow extension. You cannot produce more force in this position. The reason you are able to move more load is because of the reduction in resistance on the axis of rotation because of the reduction in the moment arm length. You actually can produce the most muscle torque, not muscle force, but muscle torque, somewhere in the middle of the range of motion where you have optimal actin to myosin overlap. It's not at 120 degrees of elbow extension. It's not back here. It's somewhere in the middle. Basic exercise science, physiology, and biomechanics that maybe he doesn't understand or he's just straight up lying about. And at the same token, just because you can handle more load in a particular position doesn't mean you necessarily want to load the muscle in that position. You actually want to load the muscle in a position where the most actin to myosin overlap occurs, which in this case is going to be somewhere in the middle. Because you're getting the most cross-bridging there. The more actin and myosin overlap, the more cross-bridging, the more mechanical damage, the more the satellite cells are stimulated, the more and then that increases the amount of stimulus in terms of muscle hypertrophy and obviously improvements in strength along with that.
Now, one of the things that I found interesting is primates, specifically primates chimps, for example. They've got something like 4 times the strength of humans, for the same amount of muscle mass. Mm-hmm. Do you know why that is?
Shorter limbs.
Yeah, they're very different muscle cells. There's more actin myosin in their cells. Yeah, we're not going to get chimp strength.
And like pound by pound.
Neuromuscular effect. There's a million different reasons why they're
a
stronger.
recent one
Just they have different DNA.
Less than a pound can take its fist and punch through a human skull.
Yeah, he's a 2.5 foot chimp
Yeah.
versus a 6 foot man.
Don't own one of these pets.
Yeah. I've heard they're powerful animals. Do not mess
Yeah,
with them.
and once they reach sexual maturity, they're not your friend.
So
What's it got to do
how
with
did you get
anything?
into bands? Like what? Like I'm assuming that you weightlifted, for a good chunk of your life, right?
20 years.
Yeah.
Didn't get much on it. Yeah, I was in shape. Like if I was at the beach with my shirt off, people would be like, "Oh, yeah, you lift."
Mm.
But I would have to take my shirt off before people would notice.
Mm.
Now I walk into a grocery store and like high school kids will stop me and be like, "Oh my god, like you play in the NFL? Are you an MMA fighter?" Like,
What an arrogant cuck this guy is. He's literally saying people stop him in the grocery store and ask if he's an MMA fighter or an NFL player. Dude, you just look like every other 45-year-old bald dude who takes 1,000 milligrams of test every week. Like, you don't look very impressive. And even that picture on the front of his book, you look like shit. My God, I train for a total of an hour a week. I make you look like a girl.
I look like a total mutant now.
No, you don't.
And
You just look
so,
like a juiced up.
It's just a
bald-headed
difference.
douche.
So I lifted weights for 20 years. It really didn't do much for me. And then it was when I was doing the clinical trial.
Let's see. I'm going to look up this guy and see what he looked like 20 years ago. I'm sure I can find an older picture of him. John Jaquish. Ooh, didn't do much for me. Get the fuck out of here. And Jaquish Young. I'm going to type Young. Let's see if we can find a picture of him young. Con artist? Yeah, people are onto it. I don't see any pictures of him young. Oh yeah, no, I mean the dude is clearly taking some serious test. Nothing against bald people. I just want to make fun of him because it'll help the YouTube algorithm. Honestly, that's the only reason. I really don't give a shit what he looks like. It's just, when you're a little abrasive, kind of helps get views. Listen, I'm abrasive just because this is just how I am, but I push it a little more just to make it controversial, get more views. Hey, don't hate the player, hit the game.
File for the bone density device, where the bone density device is really simple and elegant, kind of like X3. Like it places tremendous loads on the impact ready position. So if you trip and fall, like what I was just showing you with that.
It does not place tremendous load on it. It places tremendous resistance. And whatever the hell the impact ready position is. It's a made up word.
Position. When you got 120 degree
He doesn't know what load and resistance is.
You can absorb or produce the greatest amount of force possible. Whereas when you go to the weaker range, like if you're bench pressing with the bars on your chest, you have 1/7 of the capacity. So you're always going to select a weight you can handle in the weaker range of motion if you're going to lift weights. Thereby, it's really not going to stimulate the majority of the force capacity that you have. So you're really...
That doesn't make a difference. You don't need to challenge the muscle in the position where it can necessarily produce or overcome the most resistance or the most force or the most load. You want to challenge the muscle in a position where it can produce the most muscle torque, aka optimal actin and myosin overlap. This does not occur anywhere near the fully extended position. That's where Nautilus equipment comes in. That because it is designed to vary the resistance and place more resistance, not load, more resistance in the position of most actin and myosin overlap. It's got nothing to do with you. You don't need to challenge a muscle where you produce the most, where you can overcome the most load. If that were the case, why wouldn't you just get in 120 degrees of elbow extension and just hold it there? Right? Doesn't make any sense.
Really not switching on a lot of muscle. And even also, if you switch it on, that doesn't mean you take it to fatigue. Because I think we've had a lot of false positive excitement when it comes to electron myography. Like, we can tell when a muscle fiber switches on. It's a pretty simple way scientists have had to measure, and it's important in neurology too. Because when someone's going through neural rehab, we got to make sure muscles are firing, the correct signals are going to the correct places so people can have normal movement. But firing and power, firing and stimulating.
See, and guys like this who don't have, and I notice this a lot with personal trainers and like bodybuilders and shit. They hear these terms like firing and sending signal and whatever, and they just say a bunch of stupid shit that doesn't really mean anything in order to come off as knowledgeable or credible. So he's saying, we know how a muscle fires and making sure it's sending the right signal to the right places. What the fuck does that mean? That doesn't mean anything, guys. That means nothing. That's just a bunch of just word vomit in order to come off sounding like he knows what he's talking about. That means nothing.
Growth are two different things. And so we were a little distracted by that. And also, there's this sort of universal blindness when it comes to weightlifting, where weightlifting is sort of like accepted as the only way to do it. Mm-hmm. And then whatever nuance you put on the weightlifting, whether it's more sets or less sets, or
see, this guy he has so little fucking clue what he's talking about. He can't even get his words out. He's like swallowing his tongue. He's tripping over his words because he literally has nothing to say. He's like, he can't even come up with it. He's trying to come up with bullshit, but he can't even come up with bullshit. That's how dumb he is. So he said, oh, there's this blindness that people accept that weightlifting is the only way. No, you idiot. It's not the only way. It is the most efficient and effective way that we know of now. Your rubber band is not. It's not the only way. It's the most efficient.
2 large pizzas beforehand because you're one of those idiots that think carbs is good for you.
Idiots that think carbs are not bad for you. Too many carbs are bad for you because too many calories are bad for you. There's nothing bad. There's nothing bad about carbs. Just like there's nothing bad about fat, bad about protein. If he still believes this, then, oh, man, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Another commercial. Athlete X is okay. Athlete X knows a lot about physiology. I don't know what Muscle Miami is. Athlete X knows a lot about physiology, but he doesn't know anything about actual exercise and stimulating muscles.
Whatever. Like it's just sort of like weightlifting is just blindly accepted, and I just took a step back when I did that clinical trial for my first one.
Weightlifting is not blindly accepted. Weightlifting has been studied since the fucking 1920s. Blindly accepted. No, there's tons of research on it. Tons. Blindly accepted. Well, the reason people use it because there's a ton of research on it.
And I said, weightlifting is a lousy stimulus.
Weightlifting is not the stimulus.
Massively. So my first thought was bands, and I was going to just.
He says we need to vary the resistance massively. Agreed, but he's talking about varying the load because he doesn't know what he's talking about. We do vary the resistance massively. Nautilus came up with this in the 60s. Arthur Jones built a machine which varied resistance in the 60s on his porch. This is not new. This is old news. So if he's trying to claim that he came up with a revelation that variable resistance is important, bro, Arthur Jones came up with that before you were born.
Write a book about bands because I was already busy with osteoarthritis. I already had a big company. And so, like as soon as I did it, I was like, as soon as I kind of did the research and realized just using bands is worthless. There's a reason bands have been around forever and they never really helped it.
Oh, but now they do because of your $500 bar that
You
you
said that
just.
bands were worthless.
Yeah, get them, Rich.
How is your band system not worthless?
Listen, I'm not a huge fan of Rich Cooper, but he's smelling bullshit right now, and I'm glad that he called him out on this. Because he's probably like recording this thing and worried, like, oh my God, this guy is such a fucking fraud. He's going to make me look bad. So yeah, he had to step on him a little bit here. Even though Rich Cooper's full of shit with a lot of stuff he talks about too.
Because bands by themselves will twist your small joints, your ankles and your wrists.
Oh, so that's where the plate and the bar comes in.
Right. It was the plate and the bar that needed to be developed. And then once that was developed, I filed patents on all that stuff in 36 different countries. And
Wow, you're so impressive.
It was super popular right away. Did a soft launch on Dave Asprey's podcast.
Nobody gives a shit.
That was my first podcast. Yeah. And it's been growing so fast since then. And we don't really target the typical fitness crowd. Because the typical fitness crowd is not interested in listening to science at all. Or able.
The typical fitness crowd knows you're full of shit. You're interested in targeting these idiots who think that they're going to look like a fitness model training at home. While you could get tremendous results working at home, you working at home, probably not. You're probably going to want to use machines that can provide added resistance to the targeted muscle group so that way you can progressively overload. He's not targeting the fitness crowd because the fitness crowd knows you're full of shit. Even though the fitness crowd doesn't care about science. I do agree with that. The fitness crowd is pretty dumb. People in general are pretty dumb. You know this guy's a PhD, right? Yes, it's a bullshit PhD. Bullshit one from the Cayman Islands, a diploma mill. He's a fraud.
Hard to count.
Also, listen, be careful with the appeal to authority thinking fallacy. Just because someone has some letters in front of their name doesn't mean they're not an idiot, okay? My doctor told me one time to do more cardio because my heart rate or my blood pressure was high because he was using a cuff that was too small. I have 18-inch arms, and he used a regular cuff on me. He said I had to do more cardio. Okay. Then the next time I went in, I said, hey, can you use the larger cuff? He said, yes. Only diploma mill. So the next time I went in, he used the bigger cuff on me, said, oh, your blood pressure went down. Fucking idiot. No, I told you to use the larger cuff. That's why you got an accurate reading. And then he's looking at my lungs. He goes, are you a runner? No. Are you a swimmer? No. Well, what do you do? My doctor said he never heard lungs that sounded this good. He thought I was an endurance athlete. And I told him I resistance trained about twice a week. Okay. And this is a doctor. The doctor was telling me to do cardio one day. Came back from my next appointment. I told him I didn't do cardio. Came back from my next appointment, and he thought I was a fucking marathon runner. They don't understand exercise. Just because someone is a doctor or has a master's in fucking gender studies doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Be careful.
Oh, they might just be impatient and unwilling to read, or just unable because, science is kind of complicated.
I'm just going to play this video here so you guys can see what it looks like to use this band and bar system.
Video. Yeah.
This is like basically a deadlift that you're doing here.
Yep.
It's frozen. Why is it not playing? Is it supposed to be frozen?
Guys, this will work. This will stimulate muscle if done to failure.
Oh, okay.
But not 3 times faster than
so
weight
rather than doing
or traditional
like a
weightlifting
deadlift
methods.
with a bar with a bunch of plates on it, you're basically standing on that plate.
Yeah.
And you're deadlifting, and that increases the weight, towards the top of the range.
Right. Where you are more powerful
So he's got this little device on here that reads the amount of resistance the band is providing. Obviously, when you stretch the band more, it provides more resistance and more tension on the muscle. That number is literally meaningless. So it's like he's showing the number go way, way up to like 600. And as if that has anything to do with the muscle's stimulation, the stimulatory effect of the resistance. The more you stretch a band, the more resistance it's going to create. That's what this number is reading. That is irrelevant. Who cares?
Weight goes up. Where you are less powerful.
The weight does not go up, you fucking idiot. The resistance goes up.
Well, the weight goes down.
Yeah.
It ensures that you go to a deeper level of fatigue.
No.
Here I'm doing a deadlift with 614 pounds at the top. I would never.
He said he's doing a deadlift with 614 pounds at the top. I would never do a deadlift with 600 pounds. Dude, it's not 600 pounds. It's not a 600-pound deadlift.
We'll grab a bar with 614 pounds.
How's that device measuring the resistance, like the weight? Is it?
So you can see by my left hand, there's something with a wire coming off it. That's a
I see. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, that's not part of the product. That's just they're there. I mean, I don't have the load, so I'm just using it.
Yeah, that's just the product itself. Okay.
Yeah. So.
And that would be like the bench press you're doing there. That would be a squat.
Yep. Squat.
Okay. So, I mean, like, what about other, like technical movement? Sorry, the screen. What about like other technical movements? You know, for example, something like a Zottman curl. Like a Zottman curl, for those of you that don't know what that is, like you basically take the bar and you flip it up and you're twisting the weight like this, which activates like the wrist and the forearm. You don't have access to do movements like that.
You should not. That movement is completely pointless. If you're going to do a curl and pronate the wrist, that's ridiculous. It's not. It's going to involve muscles in the forearm, but your wrist pronates and supinates your biceps. Look at my arm. The biceps pronates and supinates the wrist. So if you're doing a curl, pronating and supinating, it's not working your forearms anymore. It's just working your biceps differently, pretty much less effectively. You want to maintain a supinated position with a biceps exercise because you're going to be able to produce the more contractile force and the most actin-myosin overlap. Not pronated. Look. Wobbly. Tight. This is simple shit.
With a band system, right?
No, you stuck to basic barbell movements.
Because that's all you can do with them, bro.
And a lot of it has to do, there's a great study that shows that you lose about 20% of your muscle fiber when you train one arm at a time. So the upper body likes both arms to be engaged. The lower body, on the other hand, is the opposite story. Because unless you're a kangaroo, you walk on one leg at a time. You run on one leg at a time. Mm-hmm. We're very good at one leg activation and force production. So it's really weird. Like you switch to one leg squats, and you think you would just go half of your normal squat weight. No, it's more like 75%, and you get the same amount of reps. Mm-hmm. And also, you get all.
Nothing he said means anything. That doesn't make any difference. He says the body likes to produce force one leg at a time, but doesn't. But the upper body does not. So, I'm like, what? What is he referring to? So if you train one limb at a time, you lose 20% of muscle fiber? What the fuck did he even just say? What? That doesn't make any sense. I don't even know how to address that. That's so stupid. This is the dumbest guy I think I ever watched.
So you can go to a deeper level of fatigue.
One of the things
No, working one side at a time does not allow you to go to a deeper level of fatigue. What are you talking about?
Liked about using it is I don't want to say I have a bad back, but my back ain't great. I injured it a couple of times in my 20s, and it's never really been the same. Although I've done enough in my life to kind of like minimize that. So ever since that, I haven't been a heavy squatter. Don't generally like do heavy deadlifts.
You don't need to do anything heavy.
Advanced system because the weight changes.
How much you paying you,
as
Rich?
you stand up straight, for example, like the weight gets heavier as you're reaching the end of the band.
No, the resistance increases. The weight does not
You
get
don't
heavier.
actually have any opportunity to injure your lower back.
The weight is the same.
Or with like squatting or with deadlifts.
Guys, with a barbell, the weight is exactly the same the whole way through. The resistance changes based on changes in moment, arm, and leverage, and actin and myosin overlap.
That's right. Oh, here, I got
This is
a buddy of mine here who's claimed to fame. Nice to see you, Ron. I'm glad you're there and chiming in.
All right.
It said 1,312.
So that is this guy's spiel. And I pretty much dismantled everything he said. There isn't a single thing he said that was true. Completely false. If you guys have any questions about this or this retard, go ahead and put them in the comments below. Muscle Miami, I'll check them out. Let me see. Gamer Body, yeah, I'll do that. I will do that. The moment arm. I explained the moment arm a little bit in one of the live streams. I don't know if I did it on Patreon, but I will explain the moment arm in depth on Patreon. How the changing moment arm affects the amount of resistance on the targeted muscle group. So throughout the range of motion, you have a changing moment arm. And that is going to affect the amount of resistance on the axis of rotation and thus the targeted muscle group. Let's see. So apparently this thing costs $550. Unbelievable. You should make a video on Mike O'Hearn. Would be funny as fuck. You would get views too. Yeah, I'll do that. Find me, send me a good video on him that I can debunk. I mean, I know who he is, and he says he's natural, and he's just absolutely insane. But he's like an actor, really. I mean, you gotta figure like it's his brand. He's acting. It's like a character almost. It's like who knows if he even believes the shit he says. John claims to only be on TRT. Testosterone, it's TRT, not THT. It needs one meal every 24 to 72 hours. All meat is supplement. Such a lie. He's probably on testosterone. He's probably on 2,000 milligrams a week to be able to eat so little, maintain any muscle. Do you know who Jeff Nippard is? No, I do not. Let me see. Jeff Nippard. Any other questions about this complete friggin' clown? Go ahead and put them in the comment section. Jeff Nippard. Oh, he's with John Meadows. Yeah, John Meadows died at 50 years old. Guys, obviously. Like, you see all the shit he was taking? Jeff Nippard. Jeff Nippard looks like a 5'5", 5'6" douche. So, you guys like Jeff Nippard? Let's see, how tall is this dude? He's probably going to say like, 6'1". Yep, 5'5". You can tell based on body proportions. Listen. Okay, Don Coolio. Let me see. Question about arms. All right. My arms are lacking big time. I think it's hindering me from lifting heavier. What do you recommend? When you mean your arms are lacking, what do you mean? Do you mean they're lacking in terms of muscle growth, or do you feel like they're dying out before other muscle groups while you're training? Go ahead and submit a follow-up to that question, answering those questions, and I can help you. How about bands being safer for the joints? For example, at the bottom of the bench press with bands, there's less resistance when the shoulder joint is vulnerable. True, but if you are lifting with an adequate rep cadence and not generating peak forces, it is just as safe for the joints. Bands are not ineffective, but they are also not more effective. They are less effective than barbells and machines, and even a lot of bodyweight exercises. They will stimulate improvements in muscular strength and size, but again, you're not getting maximum resistance where you're getting optimal actin myosin overlaps. So it's less effective. It would hypothetically, be safer on the shoulder joint at the bottom of the range of motion. But if you are using a reasonable load in a safe rep cadence, you don't have to worry about that. You can use 315 pounds on the bench press. As long as you are changing direction slowly at the bottom, you're going to be avoiding peak forces and your joints are going to be fine. I train with relatively heavy loads, and I haven't had an injury in over a decade. Okay, just as muscle growth, I don't train them as much as possible. It's my least favorite exercise, focused a lot on shoulders. Well, if you want to bring up your arm development, you're going to have to add an exercise or two that trains them directly. It's not going to hinder the development. If you're not training your arms directly, it's not going to hinder the development of other muscle groups. No way. Okay. How can I protect my joints from injuries? Proper form is slow movement. Slow changes in direction. That's how. Doesn't even need to be a slow movement. Slowing the cadence down is going to help you change direction more slowly. But what hurts joints is, first of all, overuse. Second of all, high peak forces. When you change direction quickly, like you would probably see on that force production machine that this dipshit was using, if you were to go down and accelerate, you would notice the force production would go through the roof. High peak forces is what's going to cause or increase the risk of injury on joints. So if you're coming down from bench press, for instance, and changing direction slowly without additional momentum, your joints are going to be absolutely fine. If you hurt a joint during resistance training, it means you were changing direction way too quickly. There's no reason to ever change direction quickly, unless you're like unless you're in the NFL combine, you need to do 225 as much as you could. Like when I had to do 225 tests for football, I would bounce that sucker. But that's a different ballgame. If the lack of my arms would hinder my shoulder growth. Nope. I mean, to a degree, yeah, because your body is a little reluctant to a fair amount of disproportionate growth. So if you want your shoulder, if you have lacking shoulders, they will grow to a certain extent. But if you want to make a particular muscle group bigger or as big as it can get, you have to make the rest of the muscle in your body grow as well. That's just how your body works. I have a huge lower chest, but flat upper, no line down the middle. Should I do it? No, it's because your body composition is you have high fat content. So the reason you have a huge lower chest is because this is where you hold your fat. This is where men hold their fat. You have nothing up here is because you don't have any muscle in your chest. And you have no line down the middle is because you have too much fat on your chest. It's got nothing to do with incline. You actually don't even need to do an incline chest press. I do one every once in a while. But the problem is you need to build more muscle and lose fat tissue. It's got nothing to do with your exercise choice. Do a Doug Brignol video. Yeah, he is an absolute idiot too. Oh, yeah. Pavel, what's his name? Yeah, I'll go through a video of him too. The kettlebell guy. Complete idiot as well. Not as bad as this guy. This is the worst guy I think I've ever listened to. Pavel, I don't think is a scam artist. I think he just doesn't understand what he's saying. I think he doesn't understand exercise as much as he thinks he does. And a lot of people, again, the whole, he will he trained athletes, he trained Olympians, blah, 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 blah. And just because he trained these people, people assume he knows what he's talking about. But that can be wrong. Professional athletes and Olympic athletes are so genetically superior to us that they will, first of all, when it comes to exercise, respond to just about anything. Second of all, they can do terrible exercise on top of their training and it won't hinder their performance. That's how far ahead of us they are genetically. So then you take some idiot who trains professional athletes and the professional athlete does good, not because of the training, it's because they're genetic freaks, then the trainer takes credit for that. And that's how this happens. Because, I bet you guys didn't know that, the 1978, 79, or 77 Miami Dolphins were the only undefeated NFL team ever to go to the Super Bowl and win. Guess what they did for training? They did Nautilus-style high-intensity training. Clemson, Nautilus-style high-intensity training. Florida State, Nautilus-style high-intensity training. Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in the early 2000s. Jaguar. There are a lot of NFL players and NFL teams that did Nautilus-style single-set training to failure. But just like everything, it comes and it goes. Back in the day, we didn't have social media. So you didn't have a bunch of athletes posting their workouts. Now, if for one reason or another, this training style got popular again and some athletes started using it, it would be all over the friggin' place. But the thing is, it doesn't matter what professional athletes do, because a lot of the times the training they do is actually counterproductive, but they are at such a high level that you wouldn't even notice that is counterproductive. You would notice it's counterproductive in the NFL because of how much they get hurt. All right. But these professional athletes are so genetically superior that their training not only does not help them, it in most cases hinders them, but they're so damn good, you wouldn't even notice. Make sense? I got a couple more minutes. Any other questions? We could do questions about anything now. It doesn't need to be about this jerk off. I don't really care. How do athletes get good genetics? They're born with good genetics. Genetics are inherited at birth. It's not because they start training from young. Genetics are what you are born with. You can't. It is what it is. It's from your parents. Some people are born with the genetics to get very tall. Some people are born with the genetics that make them midgets. Some people are born with genetics that make them extremely explosive and fast. Their ability to recruit fast twitch motor units. Some people are born with long muscle bellies and high muscle fiber density, so they get really muscular. It's all different. Just like some people are born with light skin, dark skin, curly hair, straight hair, blonde hair, dark hair. It's all genetics. Can't change it. All right, guys. So that's it for me today. I've got only about 5 minutes left on my battery here, so I have to cut it even a little bit short. But go ahead and share this video to anybody who is thinking about buying this idiot's system. Let's see. I can't remember. Would you suggest maintenance calories for fat loss? Join my Patreon. I do a lot of videos on fat loss. And join my Patreon so you can ask me through the messaging system directly, and I can take a look at your diet personally. Again, if you guys want personal help and you want to message me and have me look at your diet, your workout, whatever, join my Patreon. That's the link right there. Join the Patreon. I can help you personally. I can coach you personally, but you have to be a Patreon member. I don't do that shit for free anymore. All right. Patreon.com/J Vincent. Instagram, J__Vincent. Like, share this video to anybody who wants to buy his bullshit. Dr. John Jaquish is a fraud. See you next time.